Catherine, and this is Little Bits of Heaven Homestead. Tonight I am making cold processed goat milk soap. And this is something that I do regularly on my homestead. It is a byproduct of my homestead. It is not something that I ever anticipated really doing to any large extent. I started making soap a couple years ago, primarily for us personally, and I also started making it for gifts, and it's kind of blown up and taken a whole life of its own. So tonight I am making both plain cold processed goat milk soap and then also some with oats. And the oats is specifically really good for anybody who has like skin allergies or sensitive skin. The oils in oatmeal is recommended for things like if you ever get a sunburn or you're having some allergic reaction. Oatmeal is really, really soothing to the skin. And so what I've done beforehand, because I do cold processed soap, I melt my oils typically the day before, sometimes a couple days before. It just kind of depends on what I'm up to and what fits into my schedule. So I do have, and this is a big batch of oils. So in here, I have 3 different types of oils. And these are my preferred oils to soap with. I use olive oil. It's super moisturizing. If you ever heard of Castile or Castile soap, it is 100% olive oil. And olive oil soaps are known to be a soft, hard soap. So they always start on the soft side and then end up being a really hard soap. And then I also use coconut oil. That's one of my favorites to do any body care products with. It is super moisturizing, or sorry, not moisturizing. It is super cleansing. So I always couple it with an oil like olive oil that's super moisturizing to offset that. So coconut oil does have some moisturizing properties, but more than not, it's used for cleansing. And then I also use castor oil, and that gives you a bunch of bubbly suds when you're using your soaps. Without it, you don't quite get as sudsy, and it's also really great for skin. So, and then I went ahead and pre-measured my lye because I'm kind of discombobulated today. I can't see my comments, so hello, Kicking It with Karen. So you've been looking for a cleansing recipe like this. Awesome, follow along. So, and then Life in the UP, hello. So sorry, I'm having to like lean forward. I got my camera further away than I normally do, but in order for you guys to see what's going on, I can't necessarily see the comments, so you're just gonna have to roll with me today. So, and then I do have my goat milk. And it's hard to see because the lighting's kind of crappy, but I freeze it in advance. I use my preferred way to freeze these is in ice cube trays. And then that way, as I measure it out, depending on how many ounces I need, I can just throw in individual cubes to make my weight. So as far as soaping goes, you're going to want to have some basic supplies on hand. This I cannot say enough about. It's just a kitchen measuring scale, and it does by ounces. Let's see. Hello, Sandy. I think I saw that right. So please, I encourage you guys to try to soap on your own. In fact, anything that I show you here is not necessarily hard. I've done a lot of research on this, and so there's reasons why I use the individual oils and products that I use, but the actual doing this is not hard. Anybody can do this. So you want to have a kitchen scale because soaping is a science. It is chemistry. It's important to have your formulas correct. I always run my formulas, even though I've made this same recipe so many times. Anytime I change anything like the batch size, I will go back and run it through my soap calculator. Hello, Joseph, welcome. So I think I see that right? Yeah. So thanks for joining us. And so kitchen scale, probably one of the most important things. I do have a temperature gun, although I cold process. This isn't necessarily a huge item on my need list. I just check it more for my own curiosity. As far as safety, they do recommend, I've read mixed reviews as far as long sleeves versus short sleeves, because if it splashes on you, the lye is caustic. It will eat through skin, eyes, you know, anything that you care about. You do want to make sure is protected. Although, like I said, I've read mixed reviews as far as wearing long sleeves versus short sleeves. I do regularly splash myself. I just run over to the sink, rinse it off. I haven't lost any limbs yet. So lye burns. It does burn. So, and that is something to keep in mind. That is what most people will cite as far as their primary concern on soaping, is that they're afraid of lye. Respect lye, don't be afraid of lye, but do respect it because it will eat through organic material like nobody's business. So because I don't want to be distracted while I'm on camera and incorrectly measure, I went ahead and measured my lye, I measured my oils. I do add some things, and as we go along, I'll share with you what I add to my soaps and why. So you do want some basic safety. These are my shooting goggles. I know that there's better options where it's like fully encompassed over the eyes. Because I cold process, when I add my liquids or my lye to my liquids, it doesn't necessarily off gas like it would in a hot process soap. And in fact, I made some hot process with a friend recently, which has been really fun to have a friend interested in soaping and the science and chemistry of it, because it's pushing me and challenging me, and that's something that I really enjoy just in general, is being challenged and experimenting. And that's something that soaping has offered in my life, is the opportunity to run a science experiment in my kitchen. So I did pre-measure this, and I know that I'm really dang close. So hello Sandra, welcome. So, but I do know that I'm a couple ounces over. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and I've got this on my scale, and I know what I'm going for here. And one more. Okay, and my goat milk is precious, so I'm going to toss these back even though it's just a few cubes. Waste not, want not, because the Homestead, it gives abundantly, but then it also dries up. And so you want to prepare in times of feast. You do want to prepare for times of famine, and always respect your resources. You worked hard for this stuff, so always respect it. So, and not only did you work hard for it, but your animals worked hard for it too. Okay. So my goal when I cold process is to soap around somewhere between 60 to 70 degrees. Additional safety. And I have never, like I said, I've practiced for safety, and I haven't paid for it yet, but why take chances? So some important things to remember when you're soaping is always, always, always add your lye to your liquids. And even though this isn't necessarily liquid at the moment, this would be considered our liquid. So if you go the opposite way and you start adding liquids to your lye, it could be disastrous. You could have a bubble over, you could have where it's kind of popping and exploding. Don't want to mess with that. So general rule of thumb is always, always add your lye to your liquids. And because this is frozen, it's going to take a few minutes for it to completely melt, and that is the goal. So lye does produce an exothermic reaction, so this will heat up. And let me get all that lye there. Okay, set this off to the side. And before I start, I always line my molds. Tonight I'm using, and you guys can see them in the background, my husband made these out of pallet wood, and one is slightly larger than the other. Initially I was using silicone molds. I love the silicone molds. You can do all sorts of fancy designs. I find that people think that my soaps are actually food. They look like fancy little fudges. And I've also found that my friends and family and customers, they prefer a rustic looking bar. They don't want something that looks really shaped and purposeful. I'll show you. I just made these guys and I just cut them. So, but they like that, they tend to like that shape. And I do too. It makes for a nice in your hand. And I can cut these into smaller pieces, which I really like, so that rather than throwing this entire thing in the shower and it getting soft, if I can cut it into pieces, it makes it last a lot longer. So the lye is currently melting my goat milk cubes, and what I'm waiting for is for it to become completely liquid. And I will have some little fat solids left in the bottom because this is milk. So, and why I do it this way, why I freeze my milk in advance, and I know that some people can hot process with milk. I haven't ventured into it. I value my milk a lot. And like I said just a few minutes ago, I worked hard for it, my animals worked hard for it. And milk, if you get it too warm, it'll start to scorch and scald. And you end up with kind of a funky odor. It's not necessarily, it doesn't change the qualities of the soap, it's still a good soap, but it's just not as attractive. I really like, I don't want to touch it again since I've been touching the lye, but that, I don't know if you noticed, but I had that really creamy colored goat milk soap. I love that. And I work really hard to preserve that color. And the single most important thing in order to keep that color is temperature. And so if I can keep my soaps cold throughout the entire process, I am pretty well guaranteeing that I'm going to have that beautiful creamy, it's not white, but it's like milk colored. So, and I kind of beat myself up if my soaps go into what's called gel phase, because part of what happens in the gel phase is it really darkens up the colors. And I really work hard at maintaining that light colored. So you do want to keep stirring it here and there, because as the lye melts this milk, if it's not keeping cool enough, like in the bottom where it's puddling, it will start to scorch. It'll start to saponify because you do have some fats and oil. That's what the lye reacts with in the oils, is it chemically changes. So your finished product is neither lye nor fats or oils, depending on what you're using. It's been chemically changed so that what is present when you're done with this is soap. So there is neither fats, oils, or lye in your remaining product, is the theory. I do use a formula that is super fatted by 5%, and what that means is oils and or fats that is not converted into soap in your finished product. And I do that specifically just in case my ratios are off a little bit, or I end up a little bit lye heavy. I'm guaranteed, or not necessarily guaranteed, but I have a better chance of there not being lye left over in your finished product. So can you guys see this? It's starting to get real soupy. And I wait for all of these cubes to melt, and it doesn't take that long. The lye, it really heats things up relatively fast. If I am concerned about it getting too hot, I have a secondary bowl, and I keep, and then I throw it all over the place, and then I keep ice cubes. And I will put my oils. Oh, hello, Serenity Mountain Homestead. I'm so glad you joined us. Yeah, for some reason, notifications aren't an instant thing. It takes them several minutes, and I've noticed on my shorter shows that people start popping on towards the end because they just got the notification. So soaping shows, I don't have much of a choice. They kind of tend to run as long as the soaping process takes. I can't hurry this, so I'm stuck here in front of the camera until we're done. And I'm glad that you guys are joining. So if you do have any questions, I can see, as I have to lean forward and squint, but I would be glad to answer anything. So what I'll do is, as soon as this is done, we're going to practice the exact same principle as far as adding and this is now considered your lye solution. So you always want to add lye to your liquids. So as soon as my cubes here are completely melted, what we'll do is then incorporate the lye solution into the oils. So I do have an immersion blender. This is a handy tool to have if you are soap maker. Yikes, I hope that didn't interrupt me, guys. My mom was calling. I have it on Do Not Disturb, but she must have called multiple times. Oh, are you guys still with me? Did I get kicked off? No, it's still running. Sorry about that. Oh, and sorry, Mom, if you happen to get on here and watch. Okay, it's been one of those days, like everything's been kind of crazy. So yes, we're here. Okay, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that, Michelle. Sometimes I wonder if I'm standing here talking to myself. I have had it where I thought I was live and I stand here like for 10 minutes talking and then realize that I've been talking to myself. Okay, we are getting super slushy. I think you can see this. So at this point it looks almost like pudding mix before you put it into the refrigerator to solidify. And I still do have some cubes. I should yell at my daughter and have her call my mom just in case she needed anything. So, okay, going back to what I was saying before I got distracted there. So immersion blender. This thing, it I think it expedites the speed. I'm not sure that it does so significantly. So we have a few local soap makers and we like buying. Oh, nice. Yeah, always support locals if you can. It's always the efforts of small businesses. Although oftentimes you're going to pay more than you would at like a big box store, you're going to get quality. You're going to get somebody who put their heart and soul into it. You're going to get somebody who's, not saying that the big companies haven't researched, because they have a lot of money and time and investment into research and development, but you don't have the same heart. And when you support a small business, you're supporting a mom or a dad, or, you know, it's so much more personal. And especially if you're supporting homesteaders. So let's see. Okay, Serenity Mountain says soap making is a goal of hers this year. Do it, just jump in. My first batch was a disaster. And a lot of my first whatever experiences on the homestead weren't necessarily smooth. Disaster is probably a good description for a lot that I take on. But you just kind of can't, you just got to keep plugging at it. You got to say that I'm going to do this and I'm going to master it. And I may not be the best in the world, but I'm going to give it a real shot. And you're guaranteed to always improve if you keep at it. Okay, so now all of my cubes are gone. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to put my oils into this big bowl because I do want to keep this as cool as possible. Let's see if I can do this without throwing cubes all over my kitchen. So I will be blending for about 4 minutes, and I can continue to talk. It's just going to be a little garbled because of the blender. I apologize. I wish I could get around that. Like I said, I have done this with a spoon before. The warmer your oils are and the hotter you process, the quicker your soap is going to be to set up. And so in order to do this with a spoon, to talk to you uninterrupted, I'm really kind of at a disadvantage, because this is cold, so it takes a while to set up. Oh shoot, I should have done this and I knew I was going to forget. Sugar and salt. I should have added it to this point, and I'm going to go ahead and mix it up in here. And I should have done it right when I added the lye to my milk. I've been distracted today and I knew I was going to forget something. So, oh hello Lana, welcome. I'm so glad you caught me. So, and even if I don't get this fully mixed, adding it at this point is going to be better than just dumping it into my oils. Okay, so again, super important. I cannot beat this drum enough. Always, always, always go lye into liquids. Lye into liquids. Never the opposite. And so when you're setting up, make sure your biggest container is your oils that you're going to finish your soaping process in. So important. Okay, so take your immersion blender and go ahead and stick it in, and then give it a good tap because it traps air up inside the little bell there, and you want to try and avoid as best as possible incorporating air into your soap mixture. It'll do little bubbles in your finished product, so the least amount of air you can incorporate in the front end, the better your finished product's going to be. So, and then I'm just going to go ahead and dump this in. And I do have some salt and sugar left over. The purpose for the salt and the sugar is to make a harder bar. It's going to help dehydrate the bar, and that is primarily the purpose of cure time. Your soaps are pretty much ready to go after this mixing process. Hot process is ready to go instantly. Cold process they recommend to cure for 4 to 6 weeks, although I do know chemically it's ready to use within a couple days, And the whole point of curing both on hot process and cold process is to encourage evaporation so that your bar is a harder, longer lasting bar. And so salt and sugar can help in that process. It doesn't necessarily speed it up to any huge degree, but I have noticed there is a decent change as far as the hardness of my finished product. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and throw this on. I'm going to mix it for about 4 minutes. Hey Darlene, welcome! Oh, it's so good to see. I love these live shows and you guys popping in. All right. And I do alternate between mixing with this, and then I'll give it about a minute or two, and then I'll stop and do a quick hand mix, because this can go into what's called false trace. And trace is when it has like a pudding-like consistency. There's different levels of trace. You can have a real liquidy trace, which is called light trace. Medium is more like a thin pudding consistency. And then once you start getting into thick trace, I find it's hard to put into the molds. And I really prefer to use my soaps, as far as getting them into molds, more in the medium trace. And you'll see, it's a very visual thing when this changes consistency. And you can actually lift your mixer and do a little pattern on the surface, and you'll see it stand up. So it won't be as liquidy as it is currently when you get to trace. So I do like to do lots of fun soaps. Primarily I like to stick to organic essential oils, as I do have quite a few people who request synthetic fragrances, and there's a lot of really fun synthetic fragrances. So even though my initial mission was to stay organic and non-synthetic, I've actually found myself going into that realm. So do you make your molds? Yes. So these in the background are the molds I'll be using, and they're actually pallet wood. We do look for heat-treated pallets, not the chemically treated pallets. And we use pallets for all sorts of things. And so this is, and I'll show you guys before I pour into the mold. And I've got one that's slightly larger than the other. I started with silicone molds. I told the story earlier. I don't like they look a little too finished for me. I like the rustic look of these bars. And so I requested that my husband make something that I could make bulk. And so this is what we came up with. We actually went outside and measured the interior of our freezer, because part of the cold process soaping is I keep it cold until I'm able to cut it. So after I'm done making this, what I will do is pour it into the molds, and then I take it outside and put it into our freezer, because I try to keep it from getting into that gel stage. And even when you're done mixing this, your lye will continue to heat your oils. So and some people actually go for that gel phase, and it's not necessarily an undesired thing, it's just not what I want in my soaps. And so as you're taking on soap making, you can really customize it to whatever it is that you want to do. And you can tweak your looks to look however you want. So part of the fun is you also get to determine colors. I'm going to take my glove off so I can show you guys this. So this, I just made this the other day, and the lighting's terrible, sorry. But you can see that really creamy color, and the brown is cocoa powder. And this is a coffee and vanilla scented soap that a friend of mine requested. I'll go ahead and take this glove off too. And so I made a huge batch for her. And because I used vanilla fragrance oil, it is a synthetic. It has vanillin in there, which will actually discolor your soaps. And this is something that I learned the hard way, is some of these fragrances, if you add it directly into the big pot of soap, it could potentially discolor your final product. So what I do on these where I know that it's going to discolor is I only put the fragrance into my colorant part. So can you carve the soap while it's, oh shoot, I'm so sorry. I missed your comment there. So Jeff, if you could ask that again, and whoever just asked something right after him. So as far as cutting the soaps, which I think was Jeff's question, or Joseph, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't be so far away from the camera. What I do with my soaps is I put them into the freezer and let them stay in the freezer for about 24 hours. And then I remove them, and it takes them about 12 hours or so to where I can knock them out of these molds. And then so I don't know if you guys can see, I've got my molds lined with plastic wrapping. That's not necessarily recommended. And I do this because I know the characteristics and properties of my soaps. If I were using different oils, I would use most likely parchment paper, because this plastic wrap, if you have a soap that's going to really firm up really fast, the plastic wrap could get stuck in there. And I've only had plastic wrap stuck in my product once, and it was because I waited too long to unwrap it. But because I know that this is going to be a relatively soft soap initially, my preferred product is the plastic wrap, but a lot of people would recommend to not use that. And there again, you just need to play with your products and know your soaps. So this is starting to get thicker. So let's see. Darlene says, I bet it smells so good. I made my first set of soap with my daughters last month. Oh, very fun. So there's something really satisfying about soap making. I'm not exactly sure what it is. Maybe it's because people are scared of it. So it's fine, not an important question here. Oh, I feel bad that I missed it because I want to catch it. My old lady eyes, I guess, are coming into play because I'm several feet away from my camera and it's like teeny tiny print. So I do add, once I get to trace, and I'll go ahead and tell you guys this now so I don't have to remember. I think it's called Heirloom clay. So Kathy from North Star Prep Center says, I'm so impressed with your skills. Don't be, or do be, I don't know. But this is not something that I grew up doing. This is something, these are all learned skills. And if I can learn it, you guys can learn it. So I'm hard-headed. It's the redhead in me. And several years ago, I had this realization. So Serenity Mountain Homestead says, how did you get started and what are your good resources? Awesome. So I got started because I had goat milk. And I really wanted to, it's been this process. Our homestead was initially because I felt insecurity in the world. And I initially started as a prepper and realized that even having cans of stuff on my shelf wasn't really that secure, that it just kind of gave us a little buffer, and that if something were to ever happen, that I really didn't know how to do anything. And I mean, we cooked from scratch, but that wasn't all that impressive. And I had a garden for several years, and I wanted to expand on that. And I felt skillless. And we were kind of skillless. We're second generation off the ranch. And even though my family, so are you Irish or Scottish? Yes, I am both. Okay, so now this is getting thick. And so kaolin clay I would add at this point. I would also add my essential oils. And I prefer frankincense, rosehip, and then vitamin E. I'm a mess tonight, guys. So I'll go ahead and add it at this point. So yeah, I got started because it was just this logical process. So I had this book, and you guys are probably all familiar with it, called The Backyard Homestead. And it shows this beautiful little sketch at the first couple pages of a homestead on like a tenth of an acre, and then quarter of an acre, and half an acre. And it just blew my mind on how and I hate the word self-sufficient, but self-reliant. So can you show us when you cut the soap? I'll try and remember to do that, Darlene. I know I've told you I'd do that before and then slacked. So I'll try and do that on my next show, is cut these so that you can see what they look like. So the book Backyard Homestead, I've got it someplace, but I don't want to run off and leave you guys. But it sketched this beautiful picture that made me just dream. And I had always wanted to have a mini farm of some sort, micro farm. Even as a teenager, that appealed to me. But the idea of having a backyard full of healthy, happy animals just really sang to my heart. And I have some moral and ethical issues with the way our food is produced currently. I have a lot of concerns. I don't tend to be a trusting person. Says you're doing good. Oh, thank you. So the distrust in me as a prepper in the system, and then just wanting to have some control over the health and quality of the life of our food, really just, it appealed to me. And so it was this progressive thing. We added rabbits. That was my first meat source. And I figured that if we couldn't butcher rabbits and harvest them, that we had no business getting larger animals. And so we gave ourselves a year with rabbits, and we were able to learn how to care for them, how to breed them, how to raise babies, how to then process them. And then the hardest lesson, honestly, was how to eat them. That was hard emotionally. And then I had a friend who gave me ducks, and ducks are just the cutest things ever. My favorite livestock ever. So, oh, sorry, I didn't see what you just said there. And so because then we built a coop, we added chickens, and then we added turkeys. We're never gonna do turkeys again. And then at some point I had the desire, then we got bees, we've got an orchard. So it was all this like layering, and it makes sense as a homesteader. You're like, oh, now I've got this gap of fill in the blank. So we had vegetables, we had fruit, we had a meat source, we have bees for pollination and or honey, although we haven't harvested honey from them. We tend to leave the bees be and let them keep their own resources. So, but then I said, well, it makes sense to add something that produces milk. And so we got goats. And it was about 1.5 years before we actually had our first goat kids. And not too long before that, a friend came into my life and she gave us a goat in milk. And so then I went from having no milk to having an abundance of milk. And we could only drink so much milk, we could only eat so much cheese. And so I was looking for a product that I could turn into something that would be shelf stable, and really it was initially for our own use and to give to families as a gift. And then it's taken on this whole life of its own. But yeah, so we had milk, and then it made sense to just start soaping because I needed somewhere. I needed somewhere for this to go. So this is ready, and I've added my essential oils. I went ahead and added my clay. The clay has all sorts of cleansing properties, but it also helps lock in and stabilize scents. And although I'm not using scents in this, if I were to use specifically essential oils, because essential oils, they tend to, and you think you use a ton of them, but the fragrance fades really fast. And so that clay will just kind of help cement it in. So this is ready to pour into my molds. So you have honeybees, that's so cool. We do have honeybees. So and in fact, we've had them, I think this is gonna be their 4th summer with us. And I'll tell you that story real quick as I pour. So what I'm doing right now is I've got my smaller mold, and this one I'm gonna do just plain. So, and I finally got smart. I realized that I can make one huge batch and pour it into multiple molds. Okay. So our honeybees, I ordered our hive, so which is the box, the physical home for the bees. So now that I've got this in, just do a quick tap, and that way if there's any air pockets or bubbles in there, they'll come to the surface, and that way you'll have a real nice solid finished product. Okay. So let me grab a spoon. Now my big mold, and so I'm adding oats to this. And so this way I have a batch of plain and then a batch of oats. And I did run these oats through the blender before I did this, and I like it real nice and powdery. So our bees, I ordered the hive, and we got it in, got it all set up, and then I ordered a package of bees. So, oh, I missed your comment, I'm so sorry. And I ordered the package of bees like in October and had them set to deliver in May. And we were out in our yard getting our hive all situated. So I love the idea of keeping honeybees, life in the UP. It's really, it's my least labor intense animals, although you do have to work them. They kind of just do their own thing. I never have to let them out in the morning. I don't have to coop them at night. So have you ever tried making candles? Yes, but not anything fancy. I just do soy candles where I order the soy flakes, melt them down, add fragrance if I want to, and then pour them. As I've got a whole, probably a lifetime supply of candles I've made. They're economical, they're long lasting, which is nice. And then they don't put out a lot of smoke, which I like. Okay, so this is my oat soap. And pour it in. Guys, we made soap together. See, that wasn't hard. So my bees, I ordered a package of bees. They were due, I ordered in October, they were due in May. We're out in the yard, locating our hive, getting it all set up, level. And we kept having these scout bees check out our hive. And so then I go into this panic, like, oh my goodness, we're gonna have this feral colony move into this hive, and I've got these bees on order showing up any day now. And so I was trying to figure out how to discourage them from moving into my hive. Turns out it was a really good thing, a blessing in disguise, because I got a call the day our bees were expected from the post office in El Paso saying that they received an empty box. So they had my package, but there was no bees. And so they called an exterminator who came and confiscated my box. Thankfully, I had insured our order, so I got my money back, but I went outside and I baited my hive. So, and what I used to bait my hive was lemongrass essential oil, and it mimics the queen's pheromones. And I kid you not, a day and a half later, I had a swarm of bees on the exterior of my hive. I was like a kid in a candy store. So I got all suited up, went down there with my brush, and just brushed this colony of bees into my hive. So that's really nice, kind of excited. It was so cool. So I couldn't have asked for anything better. And I've tried baiting other hives and haven't had success. I think it was beginner's luck. But yeah, so this colony, I think that they were just meant to be. They wanted to be a part of our homestead. They showed up, and it's the same colony we have to this day. And I have gone out and trapped other colonies, and apparently I'm not good at that. I need to work at that because they always abscond when I put them in. And I think that either I'm not catching the queen or I'm not keeping them stuck in the box long enough. I'm not sure, but I've got some research to do on that end as far as splits and divisions and trapping other colonies. But honestly, I haven't really cared because we're not really in it for the honey. I'm keto, so we don't do sugar or honey anyway. And I really like the idea of having pollinators and having bees in the backyard. And I know that there's not necessarily a honeybee decline, but the idea of supporting pollinators really excites me. So this is it, guys. And so what I'll do is I'll go throw these out in the freezer so that they maintain this really nice creamy white. And I will, depending on how thick they are, we'll see. I will rough up the edges of my soap to make kind of a fancy little top there. So have you created splits? Sandra asked. No, not yet. So, and then your molds look really nice. Do you sell them? No, we don't sell them. They're just pallet wood. Just got Wi-Fi. We'll have to watch from the beginning. So, oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So this will continue to thicken up. And so once it gets a little thicker, and definitely in the freezer, it'll just take a couple minutes, is I'll just go through and kind of make little swirls and designs on the top. This oat one, I will take some actual oats and sprinkle up the middle just because I think it looks fancy. I did that with coffee here. So thanks for showing us. You'll have the honeys trading products when necessary. Good point, North Star Prep Stutter. And that is part of what we've done here is we've set up a system that ensures that we'll have some items to barter. I am not grandiose in my survival, so I do think being prepared is a good thing. Rather need it or rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it kind of philosophy. I also am realistic that if crap does hit the fan, I'm not in that much better of a predicament. I mean, we've got animals to support. I don't know that we're gonna survive the zombie apocalypse. Add honey to the soaps. That's an option too. Yes. So could do, and that is something to keep in mind. Honey will also partially discolor your soaps. So not that it's a bad thing, just to keep it in mind. So, all right guys, so you redheads are hard-headed. Yes, we are. So I don't pretend to be otherwise. So, and you can either use that to your advantage or it can be a disability, so you just gotta kind of choose. So that's all I got. So I am going to drop you guys off. I'm gonna have to walk around my island here to turn the button because my phone is way far away. And so I'll run these out to my freezer. I'll let them sit in the freezer for about 24 hours. Tomorrow I'll remove them. The following day I will remove them from this mold. And then I give it a day or two before I actually start slicing them up because they kind of stay a little hard and pudding-ish consistency. Not pudding, that's a bad description. Thicker than pudding. But I like to get them a little harder before I cut them. So will adding honey make the soap sticky? No, it does not make it sticky. So you don't use a quantity that's going to make it, you want to use just a couple tablespoons in your product and it gets dispersed throughout. So alright guys, so I'm going to walk around now, I'm going to hit the X and we shall see you next week. So you have a wonderful night too, Darlene. Thank you so much.